Let's get a reaction tonight from the Clinton campaign. Brian Fallon is Clinton campaign press secretary. Brian, thanks for being here. We want to talk about the debate and set up to the expectations for tonight. I want to get you to react to that story and as it's developed, this immunity part of this story. Why does that look bad, the immunity to Cheryl Mills and others, and then the destruction of those computers?
No, and here's why, Brett. This is a matter that was closed back in July. So first of all, I think it's important for everyone to realize that even though this information is coming out now, it's just because the Justice Department provided things to Congress and Republican members of Congress are leaking it out about a month or so away from the general election. But it all concerns an investigation that was closed back in July. And at the time that the investigation was closed, Director Comey stood up at a press conference, we all remember it, and said that there was no basis to bring a case here. And he said it wasn't even a close call. And so at this point, we're delving into this. So to the extent that it's being aired now, let's talk about it. These were routine immunity agreements that were provided. They came after both of these two lawyers sat down and answered every question that the FBI had. They submitted to those interviews completely voluntarily. Then a couple weeks later, it was indicated by the Justice Department they'd also like to look at their computer equipment. They said sure. They had the opportunity to thoroughly examine it. And in terms of what happened to them afterwards, that's entirely up to the Justice Department and the FBI, so you'd have to ask them what they're doing with it.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a weird part of it.
In their hands.
An immunity deal that has a destruction of computer tied to it. You know, when there was, at the beginning, the thought was you don't need these computers because there aren't emails on here that matter and they're personal, so why turn them over? But then to destroy the computer afterwards just seems a little strange.
Well, it's in the FBI and the Justice Department's hands about what to do with those devices.
I want to move on to other topics. Taxes are a big issue, but before we leave this one, Brian Pagliano, IT specialist, he was paid by the Clintons. In 2011, he put the dollar amount that almost exactly matches the dollar amount that Hillary Clinton deducted on her taxes for computer work. So did she deduct taxes for having this guy erase the servers in this investigation?
No. Brian Pagliano was somebody that innocently set up an IT system early in 2009. It was a system that was designed to host the staff emails for President Clinton's personal office, and then Secretary Clinton made the decision to have her account be hosted on that same server. All of that stuff that played out in 2013 was when the server was in the possession of a private firm. It had nothing to do with Brian Pagliano.
All right, the taxes issue. The First Lady was out on the stump today. She brought up this issue in the crowd. Take a listen.
The election in November will determine whether we close tax loopholes that allow billionaires to keep gaming the system at the expense of working folks.
So does Secretary Clinton think it was a tax loophole that Donald Trump took advantage of, allegedly, as the New York Times pointed out?
Well, the Trump campaign has been pretty fierce in advocating the fact that this was all legal, what happened, that allowed him to potentially zero out his tax liability for some 18 years. And that may be true. That's not the point that we're making. The point that we're making is it fair? When somebody makes as much money as Donald Trump, should he be able to get away with not paying any taxes when hardworking Americans that are making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year are doing their fair share and contributing to the cost of hiring first responders, hiring teachers in our public schools, and supporting our military?
Is there anything specifically in Secretary Clinton's tax plan that would change the carry-forward provision that Donald Trump took advantage of?
Well, we want to tackle some of the other loopholes that probably allow him to have a lower aggregate gross income so that the effect of this net operating loss provision that he's taking advantage of would be less impactful for Donald Trump. Under our proposal, he would almost certainly pay more. And we'd also have proposals like the Buffett rule, which would ensure that taxpayers that are making a certain amount of income, the top 1% or so, are paying a guaranteed minimum amount in terms of a percentage of their taxes so that people like Warren Buffett are not paying lower rates than their secretaries. She's also got provisions that would say that if you're outsourcing jobs in terms of big corporations, if you're outsourcing jobs overseas, we're going to claw back some of the tax advantages that you took advantage of while you were having those jobs here.
So she would close other loopholes, not specifically change the carry-forward provision that you're talking about?
No, we want to change a lot of the provisions that we suspect that Donald Trump is taking advantage of that helps lower his income that's subject to taxes. But we don't know all the loopholes that he specifically is taking advantage of because he refuses to release his tax returns.
Okay. I asked Secretary Clinton the last time I interviewed her in June what she would do differently than President Obama on the economy. She said that she wanted to point out that the economy recovered, first of all, under President Obama, but second of all, said that an infrastructure project would be really on top of her mind. Today, the president writes an op-ed in Huffington Post, and he says, Republican leaders in Congress have proven they won't work with my administration, refusing to make long overdue investments, rebuilding our roads, bridges, ports, airports. A major infrastructure push would put Americans back to work and make our businesses more competitive, but Congress can't get it done. So if Congress can't get it done for President Obama, why would it get it done for President Clinton, Hillary Clinton?
I think that in the heels of this election, if Hillary Clinton wins, I do think that there will be momentum for something like an infrastructure proposal because she'll have campaigned over this last year and a half on something like the infrastructure proposal that she's put forward, which she has said she wants to make a 100-day priority, so something that she'd work on in the first couple months of her administration. So when she goes around the country and talks about it so much, if she wins election, I think that the Republicans will feel pressure to do business with her on that, especially because it's a proposal that a lot of Republicans support. The Chamber of Commerce supports it. And guess what? The Republican nominee for president also supports increased investment for infrastructure. Now, he doesn't have a plan as specific as Hillary Clinton's. He can't tell you how much he would spend or how he would pay for it like Hillary Clinton can. But notionally, he said that he thinks that we should be doing that. So at that point,
a mandate,
if Paul Ryan has his own standard bearer on his side, Donald Trump, who he's endorsed, also saying we need to spend more on infrastructure, I don't know what argument they'd have to not act on it with Hillary Clinton as president.
Last thing, expectations for tonight, fiery or policy substance? What is the Clinton campaign looking for tonight?
I think this is going to be a very unusual vice presidential debate for the very simple reason that usually in past instances with somebody like Sarah Palin on the debate stage or Dan Quayle back in 1988, you want to see, is this person that was picked as the running mate up to the job if the worst happens? And in this case, you know, for better or for worse, we have our disagreements with Mike Pence, a lot of disagreements. But I don't think his fundamental qualifications are being called into question. The issue for the Trump campaign is the man at the top of the ticket. And so Mike Pence can go out and have a blockbuster performance, and it won't solve the problem for the Trump campaign, which is that their own candidate for President Donald Trump is the one that's temperamentally unfit.
Brian, we appreciate you coming by.
Thanks, Bray.